Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to, well, the first of our new Loreweek formats, where we're no longer doing Tumblr questions. So as you can see, we have one bulletin on the docket, and that's it. But that's okay. That's okay. Because we're going ahead and focusing on the rest of our streaming focus. Loreweeks can take a backseat. It's not a big deal. We got Witcher to play. But I do have a few things to talk about. Let me pull up my random news list here. Just a couple things to talk about. Actually, hang on. Let me pull up the other news article I just saw. And this one. There we go. All right. So let's cover some really brief things. First, as ever, I do like to start with show news. So, the website did receive an update this morning. A very brief one, not the full one. Yes, I know I'm behind. Life. And that update is something I've actually been debating for a while. Something I've been sitting on and pondering, and ultimately I've decided, yeah, this is where we're going with this. So hopefully you guys are excited about that. It does mean several premiere runs and potential in-depth classics are being pushed back. But at the same time, this is something that I do feel not only should happen, but that this is a good time for it to happen. So, that's where we're pushing for that now. That's pretty much going to be July. I don't actually know roughly how long it's going to take. That's why those are the only things on the website right now for the upcoming events, because I have no idea how long that's going to take. But we're gonna get those. We're gonna get those done. We're gonna get those over with, and then we're going to. Let's see. I guess that's actually it, because the other two lore runs that I have in the dockets, I'm still kind of playing chicken, and I'd still kind of like to keep playing chicken for a little bit longer. I really want Nintendo to start releasing more games on the Switch, because that's just going to facilitate so much of the process. If they don't, we can make do. I'd just rather not if I could avoid it. That's really all that boils down to. So. But once we have done these 3 runs, including the one we're actually doing today, as well as me doing 2 more mini nations behind the scenes, then we'll be substantially more caught up with the backlog that I forgot existed. Lore runs. Anyways, so that's the immediacy of what we're doing over the next several weeks. Random news. Epic is now... So, some of you may not be aware of the fact that Shenmue 3 is Epic exclusive, which a decent amount of people were upset about. And as I mentioned, might have held grounds for an actual lawsuit, a class action lawsuit specifically. However, it turns out Epic has decided to, out of pocket, cover the refunds themselves. Basically offering a refund for anybody who wants it for the Shenmue 3 situation. This is interesting to me, because this is the most obvious duh move that Epic could have possibly made. But what I find more interesting about it is I have not heard anyone praise Epic for this, even though that is assuredly the point. I'm actually curious, and no judgment, does anybody in chat want to praise Epic for this move? I'm really curious. Because I haven't heard anything about that. Nothing positive. No need... Really, Tazara? Well, now I gotta stop the whole stream for half an hour. No. I will be updating the premiere runs on the spreadsheet tonight. Don't worry, I will. I may do it in the pause between. I don't know. It takes a while, right? I can't just be like, and hit a button and it's done. That's not how that works. I was actually hoping it would work that way, because that would be awesome. When I originally sat down with Third to figure out exactly how to get the website tracking system going, the original intent was to do something basically similar to what GDQ does. If you're not aware, oh my God, stop giving me money. If you're not aware, GDQ has a system where when you donate, there's like a drop-down menu, and you just select where to put it towards, and that just automatically slots it in. In other words, I would be completely hands off of the entire process. You would just donate money and it would go straight there. Unfortunately, there's just too many reasons why that's not feasible for me and for my website. So I have to do everything manually across 3 separate spreadsheets. So, first of all, thank you very, very, very much to Zara. As ever and as always, even though I do complain about it, I do appreciate your support, especially when I question why I keep doing this every day, like I had a little bit of an issue last night with. So thank you for reminding me why I keep doing this job. Second of all, thank you very much, Psychotic, for the donation, or excuse me, for the subscription. And welcome to the 2-year club. Thank you very much, Psychotic, and for supporting me for so long. Now, if you'll excuse me, I got to write all that down. Because like I said, I do this manually. So that's this, and then there's Tower of Time, which is actually right here, so that's up to 18 now. 18 unaccounted for. And I can't do math, so I'm going to just use a calculator. Yeah, sorry. If you ever see me mute myself when I'm in the middle of using a calculator, it's because the asterisk numpad is what I use to mute my mic. And that's also what the multiply button is on the calculator. So if you ever wonder why that happens in the middle of me calculating something on the actual calculator, that's why. Now let me write down Psychotic's thing. And thank you very much, both of you, Psychotic and Tazara, as I said. I really do appreciate it. Even though I just announced that we're pushing back premiere runs for about a month, I still appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Ovadanzel, which I'm probably incredibly butchering your name. I do apologize. I do... I don't know. I've heard every now and again someone who's a lurker who like peeks their head, metaphorically speaking, into chat. You're more than welcome to chat here. You know, we are... If you look at the website, Valvedrix, the answer to your question will be present therein. The words, God, I'm losing all my words this morning. Oh God, no! Why would you do this to me? We're pretty open here. We're pretty welcoming. We're pretty tolerant. We're pretty cool. You know, if you want to talk, if you want to chat, you are more than welcome to. You're more than welcome here. If you don't, that's okay too. I understand full well. Really, I do. I have been the guy at the party standing over in the corner, awkwardly trying to get involved in conversations and failing at it. I've been that way with my family too. That's always so weird because it's my biological family. I should be more clear. My biological family. I'm just standing over there and I'm paying attention to everyone's conversation because it's me. And I'm like, well, you know, they're talking about such and such. I could talk with them about that, and they just kind of completely ignore me. You know what I mean? I know what it feels like. I'm with you. So you can lurk if you want to. But you can also join in if you want to. Because unlike my biological family, we'll talk back. There we go. I don't know how my sunglasses get so dirty. I'm not even sure. Maybe it's just because I'm grabbing them wrong? I don't know. We're cool. Moving on. Tazara, I'm going to stab you. So, he's not cool. So, Epic. Shenmue 3, right? The reason I find this just to be a fascinating situation is because, in my opinion, this is covering their arses legally. I've said many, many times about the difference between legal land and real-life land. And I very firmly believe that this is just them putting up a wall there to prevent any possible suit or lawsuit, class action lawsuit from actually happening. Because it was already something that wasn't a guarantee thanks to the reality of how legality actually works. Adding in this, oh, we're willing to give away refunds and we'll pay for it out of pocket, pretty much nips that in the bud. There's just no more ground to stand on. At this point, it would probably be thrown out as a spurious lawsuit. So, in my opinion, that's the only reason Epic really... Well, excuse me, that is the core reason. The primary reason why Epic decided to do that. It is then, as a further, my opinion that Epic was like, you know what, let's try and really push this and spin this. In which case, I think Mechanicus is... Could someone do me a favor? I know this sounds horrible. Could someone do me a favor? Check my website, see if Mechanicus is on it. Ah, but that's not necessarily true, Juludo. Epic could have been easily pulled into that. Furthermore, even if Epic was not directly pulled into that, Epic could have been pulled into that, it could have been affected by that rather than pulled into it. Could have been impacted by the loss of sales and the loss of face and the loss of PR as a consequence. See, that's actually not true, Alex, as horrible as that sounds. It took a while, but it didn't actually get that far. It basically got to step 2. The only reason it took so long to do that is because it got to step 1, and then withdrew, and then got to step 1, and then withdrew, and then got to step 1, and then eventually pushed to step 2, at which point they realized the whole, like, the actual reality of what legal land was like, at which point it was just torpedoed. So this is Mechanicus. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to step over you on that, Alex. I'm just pointing out the fact that, like, they didn't even get to an actual trial. Never mind a jury trial, which would be an even further step along the line. They got nowhere. But anyways, so yeah, this is Epic trying to cover themselves legally and to buy brownie points. That's what this is about. You'll notice, by the way, that in every announcement about this movement, Epic has stated firmly, no, we're still going to be pushing for dumping resources into trying to obtain as many exclusives as possible. So it's not like they're going to change their mind about anything here. Make of that what you will. This is why this isn't a full topic, because I'm just kind of mentioning it. Yeah. Speaking of things I'm just mentioning, Ni no Kuni 3 is now in development. I'm not sure what I think about that. Black Mesa. So noted. By the way, I got that for Takoida, and I got that for Atlantean. Thank you, Tazara. Thank you, Tazara, very, very much, as always and as ever. Much appreciated. I liked Ni no Kuni 1, although the gameplay kind of sucked. I liked Ni no Kuni 2, although the story kind of sucked. We'll see what happens with 3. Cyberpunk. So I mentioned this one. This is actually funny. Early in the week, there was a news report about 3 additional Cyberpunk games that CD Projekt Red was in development of. That was actually a translation error. They are not in development of 3 additional games. Although, this kind of thing is one of the reasons why I try not to be... there's a term for that, like reactionary news broadcast. I do fail at that on occasion, I will admit, but every now and again I do try not to be the kind of person who was like, did you find out about this? Because I know there are several people out there who put out videos and put out articles about the 3 games thing before it was then corrected. So, I've done that too. We've all done that. Yeah. What we do know is that there are going to be 3 origins for your characters in Cyberpunk, and some additional life path options. Now, on the off chance that you don't know what I'm talking about, I've just decided to kind of showcase a little bit this here. If I can find it, because I didn't have this ready for it, because I just decided to do this about 10 seconds ago. Where is that bookmark? I have many bookmarks. I might have gotten rid of it. There's no way I would have gotten rid of that one. It's right there. There it is. Boom. So one of the things I like, probably actually the thing I like most, no Consulate, none of this is Scarab music. The thing I like absolutely most is making a character. I know that sounds so strange, because I don't actually like much of the gameplay of Cyberpunk. I feel that the system actually is fairly limited in what it allows you to do. But what it does allow you to do is to do life events. So let's just go ahead and sit down and think about this. So, where's my D20? Where'd you go? There it is. I was gonna say, my dice has vanished. So, someone pick a number between 1 and 5, just real quick. The social interacting is awesome. 4. Okay, so we're going to have 4 life events. I'm actually pulling from the real tables here. This is how this works. So, oh, jeez. So we got lucky. Okay. I don't actually have a D100 on me, so we're going to have to do this on a dice roller. But I love doing this for designing. This is all part of character creation. So we have 4 life events that have happened to us in our life. The first one, and we'll just roll a D100 here, so we got a 9, wow, is... Hang on. We had a big score at a gambling thing. So, yeah, they're all packed away, Dakota. The only dice I have anywhere accessible is my D20 right here. I haven't actually used dice in a while. So we just got a whole bunch of euros because of the fact that we got we hit it big at gambling when we were very young. And I love the storytelling that could develop here. So when we were very young, like a teenager, we hit the casino and hit it big. So let's see the next thing that happens to us in our life. A romantic involvement. Okay, so hang on, let's go down to the next table here. Let's see here. So we got romantically entangled. How did we meet them? Well, they were an old employee. So it sounds like we actually got a business going when we were very young with the money we got from the casino. And then an old employee of ours decided to kind of, you know, let's find out how it worked out. So we'll roll a d10 to figure out how it worked out. Ooh. Oh, no, that's actually a good thing. Apparently, it was a very happy love affair. It worked out very well. Oh, my gosh. And that's actually it, because it worked out well. Oh, hang on. We do have to actually roll this one, too. This is important, too. And it turns... However, as of now, as of this point in time, they hate us. So we had... So it was a former employee who we had a legitimately great relationship. However, in the years that have happened since then to now, they now hate us. So now we move on to our third of 4 life events here. Which is going to be... Make an enemy! This is actually one of my favorites. By the way, there's a lot of house rules I've heard about how exactly you do these. Some people do 1 event per year. Some people do 1 event per 6 months. Some people just decide how many events they have in their life. Like I said, we're just doing 4. So we made an enemy. Hang on. It's not going to say it. Apparently we need another chart, which I don't have accessible, but whatever. Point being, we have made an enemy. So how did we meet this enemy? Let's see here. We met them... This enemy... Yeah, no. Is an employee. Now this is a fun one. We roll a D100 to decide who is the reason they're our enemy. 1 to 50 is them, or excuse me, us, and then 51 to 100 is them. So let's see who was the offending party. It was us. We are the problem here. So what did we do to them to make them our enemy? We attempted to murder them. Now, then we have to roll who's pissed off. Basically, are they angry, are we angry, or do we hate each other? We just rolled that we hate each other. Now, here's what we're going to do about it. Hang on, let's roll here. I'm sorry, what they're going to do. Sorry. So their overall goal is, their modus operandi is, they're going to make you hurt. They're going to make us hurt the same way we hurt them. They're scarred for life. Yeah, seriously, what the heck kind of business are we in here? All right, so last life event here. Okay. Disaster strikes. Man, what is with our life? We succeeded at gambling, had a love affair which went bad, tried to kill probably the same person, and now, let's roll here. We were arrested and convicted of a crime. Probably murder. we, And so, based on the way this works, we then actually roll for how many weeks we spend in jail. Yeah, weeks, by the way. So let's see, how many weeks did we spend in jail? 10 weeks! Ooh, that's actually really high. It's a D12, so that's almost as much as we could. Oh my god, Tesara, why are you doing this to me? So, it sounds like what happens then... So, this is the reason I was going through this whole list with you guys, other than the fact that it's fun. Because now, based on a few dice rolls, we can construct a narrative thanks to the framework that we have established. You know, we've had a love... We gambled, had a love affair, went bad, tried to murder someone, and then went to prison for 10 weeks. And that's the year events leading up to when our character actually starts the game. And you can see how there's a lot of options for constructing and weaving a narrative within that. And I like that. Now, with Cyberpunk, to get back to what we were talking about earlier, getting back to Cyberpunk, they're not giving us that full option, but they are giving us something like that. I've seen screenshots. Yeah, sure, hang on. I'll go ahead and link you one of the pages I use here, which is this one. There you go. I've used this page just in general, not for the actual rest of character creation, which honestly I don't care about at all, but just because of the life path things. It's towards the bottom. You gotta scroll all the way down. There you go. And then you can see all the dice rolls down there. It's fun stuff. Oh, I forgot to roll for specifically what their job was. The lover. Here, let's roll for what our job was. Their job was really quick here. We'll just do this. So okay. They were, I need a D10. Damn it. It would, but they are offering us something like this. A bunch of side options as we create our character, and I'm hoping it'll allow us to do the same thing. Looks like they were another subchart. Hang, what the hell? Who were we dating? What in God's name? Okay, so that's 24, so that's going to be... So in case you don't understand why I'm getting just weird here, I rolled for their job, their initial job. They were in the government. So then I rolled for their type of government job, and then they're in their military. So then I rolled for their military job, and they were enlisted armymen or army woman or whatever. Anyways, I've made my point. So that sounds cool. We'll see. I'm looking forward to it. That's actually all I had to say about that. Metal Wolf Chaos finally has a release date. 1 month from yesterday, actually, aka August 6th. So for those of you curious and or interested in Metal Wolf Chaos, August 6th. Sure, max time. That is technically allowed. I'm not sure why you're doing it, given your own statement, but you never know. Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth Complete Edition. There we go. And by the way, thank you very much again, Tizara. Much appreciate the sub. Okay, so that's awesome. No, take Czar. Metal Wolf Chaos is the game where we play as the President of the United States of America. So, G2A still sucks. I don't actually feel like I need to tell this to you people. But on the off chance I do, don't buy anything from G2A. Ever. For those of you not aware, all one of you, G2A is an incredibly shady site. They've always been shady. They've always been horrible. They've never been anything but a scumbag. Like, okay, some people like to go to name brand grocery stores. Some people like to go to like local grocery stores, mom and pop stores. Some people like to go to, farmers markets kind of a thing. Some people like to go to flea markets But G2A is like that weird, creepy guy who smells just kind of off, and like he's got too much spice on, and he's over in the back alley and he's offering to sell you food. That's G2A. And I mean that with 100% sincerity. They are shady, sketchy, and you should not buy from them because whatever you're buying is almost guaranteed to not be good. For those of you not aware, the reason G2A exists at all, aside from money laundering, is because of the fact that they offer games for ridiculously cheap. We're talking like $60 games when they come out for like $12. Now, I would like to think that anybody who has a brain would see like let's say Cyberpunk 2077 just came out. And they go to G2A because they're stupid. But no. They go to G2A and they see, oh, hey, they offer Cyberpunk 2077 for $12. Don't do it. Like, I would like to think that just about anybody who sees that would be like, blaring red sirens of alertness. Now, the problem is there is some gray area in which people will be like, oh, well, maybe. Don't do it. Trust me. Please. First and foremost, I wasn't making up that little joke of an aside there. They literally are a money laundering place. As in, people steal or rob things and then buy codes and sell them to G2A to get legal money. It's quite literally the definition of money laundering. So that's problem one. Problem two is, in many cases, these codes either don't work or have been obtained in a manner that isn't viable. Oh, and also G2A is what I like to call a virus-riddled site, which would be problem number 3. So, also, good luck trying to get your money back if you happen to get a code that doesn't work. And even if you get a code that works, it's entirely within the realm of possibility, because this has happened, that your code is then basically flagged for being invalid down the road. So let's say you buy a Steam code, and you pop it into Steam, and you play for a bit, and what can and has happened, this doesn't always happen, obviously, is they'll be like, oh, that's one of the stolen codes. So they'll, and basically you no longer own the game, because you're playing a stolen copy of the game. Don't buy from G2A. Ever. Ever. Now, what's funny is Nymph just said he got a payback, and that's actually something that can happen, because it didn't happen through GTA, it happened through PayPal. Now, there's actually another funny little bit here, though. I mentioned good luck getting your money back. Actually, sometimes you can get your money back, especially if you go to the bank about it. As in Nymph's case, he did go to his bank, PayPal, because PayPal is a shadow bank. Guess who gets charged for those refunds? Because I'll give you a hint, it's not G2A. Yeah. Anyways, I just wanted to mention that PSA really quickly. So apparently G2A recently tried to defend themselves against some indie devs who were rightly bashing them. And their defense was just hysterical. I'm not going to recite the whole thing for you, but it was some of the most terribly argued drivel I've ever read. The game company, Nymph. Like, let's say you buy a game by Bragwin Co. through GTA, and then you decide to get a refund of that company, and you go through your bank or you go through PayPal or whatever. The company that gets charged for that refund is Bragwin Co. That's so what several people are like, so this is about the indie devs saying you'd rather their games be pirated than bought from GTA. Yes, that is a comment that was mentioned. That's actually not what I'm mentioning. I'm referencing GTA's response to that. But wow. Also, that's not the first time developers have said that. Seriously. I'm just weirded out that people still buy from G2A. If G2A was... wrong hand. Out of existence, I'm pretty sure that there would be no detriment to that. Moving on. Like I said, not a real topic. They're just awful, and they've always been awful. G2A sucks. Moving on. Here's a funny one. Yeah, exactly has. It's literally cost the developer less if you steal their games than if you buy a code from G2A. That's not a joke. So... recently, there was a shareholder meeting for Nintendo. No, it was just stupid, Adam. Like, just straight stupid. There are streamers who sponsor G2A. Well, those people should probably as well. Sorry for my anger, but honestly, that's basically like a streamer saying, I support this organ selling company that steals organs from people who are unwilling donors. You know, that's pretty much where that's at. But anyways, I'm getting off topic. This is a direct quote from Mr. Miyamoto at the recent Nintendo shareholder meeting. While we don't expect all games to become cloud games anytime soon, the technologies are definitely advancing. We see a future where cloud and streaming technologies will develop more and more as a means of delivering games to consumers. We must keep up with such changes in the environment. That being said, if these changes increase the worldwide gaming population, that will just give us more opportunities with our integrated hardware and software development approach to reach people worldwide with the unique entertainment Nintendo can provide. Now, I'm sorry, that actually isn't Miyamoto. That was... I apologize. That's Shuntaro Furukawa. My bad. Miyamoto then said, I have no doubt there will continue to be games that are fun because they are run locally and not on the cloud. We believe it's important to continue to use these diverse technical environments to make unique entertainment that can only have been made by Nintendo. There we go. That's what Miyamoto said. Now, I know what you're thinking. What the hell does that mean? Now, the reason I'm actually bringing this up is I have seen because this just happened yesterday? 2 days ago. Friday. I have seen multiple news sites reporting on this from completely the opposite perspective of each other, which I actually find very funny, personally. If you don't understand what I mean, like, one of these sites says, we must keep up with the cloud, as the actual article title. One of the sites said, Nintendo is committing to not being part of the cloud, as the article title. Just to name 2 examples right off the top of my head. Now, what I find funny about this is, my take on this is that they are pretty anti-cloud. I have actually read the whole thing, and I'm not going to read the whole thing for you, but I'm just going to go back to what Miyamoto said here, which is the really important part, in my opinion. I have no doubt there will continue to be games that are fun because they are run locally and not on the cloud. We believe it is important to continue to use the diverse technical environments to make unique entertainment that could only have been made by Nintendo. Yeah, to me, it seems like they're pretty anti-cloud, based on not only the president, but what Mr. Miyamoto himself said. And in fact, if you're paying attention, he's like, well, if more people are playing games, then that'll give us more opportunity with our integrated hardware and software development approach to reach people with our games. Now, that's my take on it, and there's probably translation issues and whatever. But I just thought I'd mention this because they don't actually have anything like what several other publishers actually have out there. Very much a lot of companies are pushing cloud emphasis. Google is, Sony is, Microsoft is. Nintendo is not. And I hope Nintendo never does. I know that sounds like a strange statement, but I mean that. God. I already mentioned last week the idiotic statement. You know, ISPs will step up to the plate to figure out the cloud problem. Just ridiculous nonsense. Anyways, the last thing I had to talk about, I think, let me check my notes here. Like I said, not a lot of real news this week. Okay, here it goes, yep. So I'm just going to read this article title, okay? And then I want your reaction to the title of this article. You ready for me? PC gaming is in a decline and deserves to be. Now, I actually bothered to read this article. It wasn't even a short one. I'm going to summarize it for you. Because, you know, I'm not reading this whole thing on stream. Older computer games had only one goal: to entertain and excite. Early computer games were a special art form that could awe you with presentation, jog your brain with puzzles, immerse you in their world with engaging stories, or simply help you hone your reflexes as you blasted dozens of baddies off the screen. Fast forward to the present, and this concept of PC gaming is crumbling. As an avid Steam user with over 400 games under my belt, I find it increasingly hard to find new titles that can provide the same level of fun as old ones. And that's not because of lack of visual or audio fidelity. The modern games look and sound breathtaking, no, nor is it because of the amount of content. Unlike older games, modern titles provide hundreds of hours of activities. The reason is because the industry has become far more focused on generating profits than creating good products. Skipping forward a little bit. When you stop caring about quality and focus on money-making mechanics, games lose their most important purpose and become shiny, but ultimately shallow and often half-baked gambling simulators. Then he goes ahead and gives all of his reasons why. Reason 1. Modern PC games are derivative. I'm not even going to audibly respond to that one. Point 2. Modern PC games are repetitive. Moving on to point 3. Modern PC games, this is funny. Modern PC games are shackled by politically correct storytelling. Reason 4. Modern PC games are simply glorified gambling machines. Now, what I find funny is there's literally only one game he mentions in this category, the gambling machine one. Star Wars Battlefront 2 EA. It's the only game he actually name drops for that section. I just find that kind of funny. And of course, his final reason, modern PC games are turning into mobile games. Anyways, moving on. So this is your big spoilers warning. Spoilers. As usual, I'll give you like 20 seconds. In the world. No, there was no real news this week. That's why this is going to be a short lore week, which is fine, of course. Come on, guys, get out of here. I'm giving you tons of time. Spoilers! Jesus Christ, spoilers, leave! If you don't want spoilers, obviously. Talking about what, Adam? I don't know what you're talking about. How's the weather been? Hot and humid. I have the AC running literally 24/7. It's not fun. What game, Nova Knight? No, we're talking about Spiderman Far From Home. Alright, so now I'm going to adopt the biggest spoiler right off the bat. Actually, it's not that expensive, Mike Romano. Weirdly enough. I mean, don't mistake me, the majority of my electric bill is the AC, but it's not that bad. It's like $100 a month. I have had much worse. No, Alex, I'm sorry, what was your question? Was it good? Yeah. It's a little weird in tone. It was one of those... You know how every now and again the MCU... Yeah, exactly, Dakota. The MCU just kind of has a comedy piece, and it's clearly intended to be a lighthearted comedy romp. Yeah, that's what this is. This is just a ha ha ha. And with basically only two exceptions, the film doesn't have any serious moments at all. Neuromancer trilogy. Ah, God, not in a very long time. I didn't enjoy it, or at least I don't remember enjoying it. I barely remember it all, if I'm being honest. I'll give you 10 more seconds, guys. I've given you a lot of time to pour out here. And I know that sounds strange, but I want to literally start with the biggest spoiler in the film. Okay? That's 10 seconds. This is your last chance. Okay. For me, so I want to share an anecdote. I went with my usual quartet. And the four of us all had basically the exact same reaction independently. All four of us were thinking the film was badly written because of how just kind of generally off Nick Fury was. The whole film. Like, it was nothing overt, but he was just kind of not correct. The way he reacted to Captain Marvel being brought up, the way he kind of pushed Spider-Man in several ways, the way that he it just kind of fell hook, line, and sinker for the whole thing, despite Art being Nick Fury, someone who it actually was able to manage to dodge around Hydra, for God's sakes. Yeah, no. we're all four of us were sitting there like, what the hell? Did they just decide to pencil in the intern to write Nick Fury in this movie? Well, it turns out it was all on purpose, because it wasn't Nick Fury. And admittedly, that was kind of a oh moment for all of us, because it actually did surprisingly make perfect sense. I actually can't remember the name of the character who it was instead of Nick Fury. It's down here somewhere. He was uncredited. Talos? Yes, Talos, that's him. It was Ben Mendelsohn. He was back as Talos. And it is nice to see Talos again, legitimately. I was happy to see him again. He was a cool character. And it's nice to see that the Skrull and the humans are still coordinating and working together. So that's awesome. But, like, speaking of which, this is going to sound like a weird one. But another thing, I think so, Anthony. Another thing that kind of made me go, huh? Was the fact that Nick Fury calls, Peter Parker, and then just keeps calling him, and just keeps calling him, and just keeps calling him. I just can't picture Nick Fury taking that approach, personally. You know what I mean? I think he'd call him, maybe call him a second time, and then he would probably have jumped straight to something more direct. Instead, he calls him like 5 times on camera before we finally jump to the scene, which is actually a decent chunk of the movie, where he actually is there in the room. That was probably the biggest thing for me. The idea that wasn't Nick Fury. There are a few other bits, but yeah. Interesting theory, Venters. If anything, that's probably something that's technically a retcon, but could have been put in deliberately. Because he does mention that in Captain Marvel, you're right. Yeah, his reaction to Captain Marvel, that caught my attention immediately. And again, the way he was pushing Spider-Man just felt wrong to me. Like, his entire approach didn't feel appropriately on top of things. Like, he should have been far more in control. And he didn't come across as in control. And that's just not Nick Fury, Nick Fury is a normal human being who has kept up with superheroes for the better part of the last 20 years. Right? I mean, come on. Triangle toast. He mentions how he doesn't eat triangle toast in Captain Marvel. It's actually one of the things he talks about to Marvel herself. Anyways. So, I also have to admit, my audience literally broke out into applause when J.K. Simmons appeared as J. Jonah Jameson. No joke. I have to admit, that was actually kind of awesome. I actually kind of hope that he will, at the very least, keep making cameos in the future. because that was great. Spider-Man, the greatest hero of our age, Mysterio. I can't even do it. I can't even. No one can do J.K. Simmons quite like no one can do J. Jonah Jameson quite like J.K. Simmons has. Excuse me, I'm screwing up my names now. He was brilliant. He's always brilliant. He was brilliant. I loved it. It was fantastic. I do have to mention something, though. I've heard several people complain about the fact that the biggest and most interesting points to talk about... Oh yeah, we've had Scroll for 3 movies now, Alex. The biggest and most interesting things to talk about in this movie are all the things that were at the end and in the credits, like the post-credits and mid-credits and post-credit scenes. I think that was deliberate. I know that sounds like a strange statement, but as weird as this may sound, that's probably the kind of thing I would have done too. We've had the end, the finale, but after the finale you have the epilogue. And honestly, Far From Home was the epilogue of the MCU. In my opinion, thank you, Tazara. In my opinion, Far From Home was the epilogue of the MCU. Now, obviously, the MCU is still going, but you know what I mean. Everything up until Endgame was, in one way or another, part of one cohesive story, one cohesive narrative arc. At this point, going forward, we're starting something new. In fact, I actually did a little looking into it. There's been rumors. There's been a few bits of information tossed around. Oh shoot, what was your... Yes, I did, Venters. I directly responded to you. And I basically said, yeah, I could... God damn it, man. Basically, yes, if it's a retcon. There you go. There's the summary. Anyways, but yeah, this feels like an epilogue to the Infinity Saga, as it has been called many times. And I'm with that, but it then makes sense to me that if you're going to start setting up what's happening next, you do so after everything else. You do so after the epilogue has ended. So, mid-credits, post-credits. The establishment of the fact that humans and Skrulls are fully coordinating and cooperating is actually kind of a big deal. Nick Fury is literally chilling on his own Skrull spaceship. And we've got the fact that Spider-Man's secret identity has just been unveiled, and he's being vilified as a villain, which is going to substantially change his arc going forward. And again, both of those make sense to me as something to kickstart whatever's going next, not as part of this film proper, which was why it makes sense for me for them to be mid and post-credits. You'll also notice this is some of the most substantial mid and post-credit scenes we've had in a while. Like, a lot of mid and post-credit scenes are just kind of there. They're cute, or they're silly, or whatever, and only occasionally are they really substantial. I absolutely think this is a very big character piece, yes, McCool. I've heard a lot of people say that there's nothing to talk about with regards to, the film proper. I don't actually agree, personally. Because this was very much a character-centric piece. And what I like most about it is, even though it was all done from Parker's perspective, it was, weirdly enough, not all about Parker himself. One moment. First and foremost, obviously a lot of this is about Parker. In the last Spider-Man film, he came to the grips with the fact that he was a kid. Like, that was actually one of the big narrative points, was that he was a child, and actually coming to acknowledge and accept that was part of his major character arc in Homecoming. In this one, it's a lot more about him accepting and deciding what he's going to be doing going forward. You could say more or less literally him becoming an adult is the point of this particular film. And I kind of agree, but you'll also have to notice a lot of attention was paid on how much he is becoming his own version of Stark. Someone who is very smart, because Parker's always been one of the top tier intellects in the Marvels. That's not exactly new. He's very smart, he's very driven. He wants to do things to help people. He constantly second-guesses himself, constantly questions himself. He is a huge mess. The difference is, you could tell how the two have many similar character beats, but are expressed in different ways. The idea that Stark is someone who can be very suave and just kind of roll with the punches and snark, but internally, he's falling apart, just absolutely crumbling. Whereas it's kind of the opposite, or a slightly different perspective when it comes to Peter. Parker has no idea how to handle himself verbally or around other people. He doesn't have the charisma. He doesn't have the panache. He doesn't really know how to snark. I mean, he's just a stumbling, awkward kid. But the moment things get into a situation where he has to move forward, he knows exactly how to do it. Just, oh, well, I need to do this, and I need to do this, and this is how this has to work. He's got very good instincts. And he's got great reflexes. And I don't just mean physically, but mentally as well. When he has to deal with the situation, he knows how to fix it almost immediately, the moment he actually thinks about it. As an aside, by the way, I agree. I loved Happy in this film, like a lot. More than I thought I would. He was perfect for this film. Just very, very well presented. And I hope that Happy does end up, with Ant-Man, the two have something good together. That would be great. Nice happy ending there, no pun intended. I don't think they mention specifics on who gets snapped, with only a couple of exceptions, if and but. Speaking of which, can I just say that the Blip is one of the dumbest names I've ever heard to describe something that catastrophically horrible? I mean, this is horrible. Now, while it's mathematically inaccurate, calling this the Decimation certainly is far more narratively and thematically appropriate. It gets across the idea, the Decimation. The Blip is just kind of... Really? You're calling it the Blip? Like, 3 trillion people died. And then came back, and you're calling it the Blip. Right, whatever. Spoilers, Savicom. Spoilers. Spoilers. That being said, I know this sounds horrible, but I actually find a lot of storytelling potential in the consequences of the decimation and everything coming back. And I mean that sincerely. I feel like there's a lot of potential storytelling there. And it's almost weird because they completely brush that under the rug in this film. And it makes sense. It's supposed to be a lighthearted comedy film. But there's 3 major points where they specifically acknowledged it that I actually rather enjoyed. Point 1 was the footage. They showed someone who was recording a shot of a basketball game when half of everyone died. And even though it was being portrayed basically as a joke, those few seconds came across just as horrifying as they should have been. Like, that was just a quiet whoa moment. Then, again being portrayed as a joke, they showed the footage of the game where everyone just kind of came back all of a sudden. The second point is obviously the disparity in ages. Some of the, literally replacing one of the actors with another actor because, hey, he's 5 months older. And yeah, the idea of my wife. Did you know my wife? I thought she had been snapped, and she actually wasn't. She just left me. We had a funeral for her and everything. And of course, the woman comes back in someone else's home. That they thought I was a ghost. They weren't sure what to make of it. Bits by bit, there's just little brushes of details there that showcase just how much of an impact this had at every level of society. All the way up and all the way down. Did I say months? I meant years, sorry. All the way up and all the way down, which I find fascinating. And then, of course, they basically brush past all that to get to the meat of the episode, which is, again, the point. Meat of the movie. I call everything episodes or games. What do you want from me? It's just another episode of the MCU, right? Oh no, realistically speaking, if we're being completely honest, I would imagine that at least part of the reason that the filmmakers have kind of tried to have a business as usual approach to the recovery from the decimation, the blip, is because of the fact that the reality of that has to be so monumentally, nightmarishly devastating that they kind of can't do that. Not without going full post-apocalypse. So they've decided to just kind of be like, things work out. Don't think about it too much. Don't think about it too much. Yeah, this would be a full-on horror setting from this point onwards if they really sat and thought about it. Just, anyways. Thank you, Tazara. Thank you very much. Please stop. And tell me what you want to put these towards, because you haven't told me the last two. Now, okay, Salty Panda Bear has to choose where it goes. Now, I did notice that Stark was a constant element. At first, I thought it was amusing, but then I started to notice literally everywhere they went, there was at least one mural or painting or statue or dedication or something to Iron Man. Now, that actually makes a lot of sense to me. Ignoring the fact that Iron Man really was kind of a global hero, Earth's greatest defender, as Cap himself called him, it also makes sense that word would have been spread that the fact that Iron Man specifically and individually is the one who died to save everyone. So yeah, no, he's probably literally being venerated worldwide. It makes sense to me. And of course it makes sense. Why would anyone complain about that, Anthony? It makes sense to me that Tony Stark would still have a massive presence in the film because this is a film focused on Peter Parker. And that's the biggest reason why I think that makes perfect sense. That's exactly what I would have done too. Of course it's going to be focused on Tony Stark. Parker finally got something like a real father figure after he lost his uncle, and has tried for basically all of his character arc to live up to Stark, and to be good for that, and to work hard for his position as a hero. And then he died in an extremely final way. Yeah, exactly, Fellow Bear. So, yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me that Parker still is just carrying this monumental weight of his dead dad, basically. Oh, don't even say that, Dakota. I don't even want to think about that. Oh, absolutely, Savicom. I remember very distinctly when Stark finally gets back to Earth, when Marvel carries him back. And one of the very first things he says to Cap, one of the first things he says to Rogers is, "I lost the kids." It was just one of the first things out of his mouth. You could tell it was just on his mind, right there at the forefront. Just, yeah. One of the things I like best that this film did, and I know this sounds strange, is a fairly accurate portrayal of multiple perspectives of teenage life. Late teenage life, like late high school, approaching college years. And I know that sounds like a strange comment, but too often people tend to approach that from a singular perspective. And instead we see at least 4 different types of people who are... Actually, I'm going to take that up to 5 different people who are all awkwardly dealing with that part of their lives, all in a very different way. My favorite dynamic is actually between Parker and MJ. I know that sounds like a strange statement, but what I mean by that, and I noticed this early on too, if you pay attention, MJ and her particular, let's call it social norms, or social idioms, is something that is still, oh God, how do I phrase this? She's just as awkward and shy and unsure around Parker as Parker is around her, but she approaches it and copes with it in a completely different manner. He does basically the obvious, the typical. Stuttering, and uncertainty, no idea what to do or how to deal with it. You've seen it before. You've probably been it before. I have. She covered. She just absolutely obfuscated. And, of course, this being a film in which Mysterio is the main villain, and the entire main theme being about people believing what they want to believe, it makes sense that MJ is just throwing up mask after lie after misdirection, one after another. Almost the entire film. The first time she finally drops all of that is literally like the 4th to last shot of the film, when they're on the bridge after having defeated Mysterio. I liked that. I liked how she was presented. And I think the actress did a very good job with it. Because, again, there was a bit of nuance there. And you could tell she was doing it, too. You could tell she was just kind of, and then she'd just pop off some random factoid, and it's just, yeah. Do I think Peter picked up on that? Absolutely not. Peter Peter is not a people person. And that's fine. That's not his shtick. He doesn't have to be a people person. But I don't think he is an observer of individuals anywhere near to the level of other characters I could mention. I mean, God's sakes, he didn't pick up on... I'm sorry, Dream Whisperer. I can't think of his name all of a sudden. Mysterio. He didn't pick up on Mysterio. Which, and I point that out. Obviously, we knew Mysterio was the bad guy. We knew that. It's Mysterio. Literally, Mysterio's shtick is pretending to be a hero and actually being a villain. That's just done. We all knew it was coming. And I'll talk about him in a minute. But I just wanted to point out, if you're paying attention, there were quite a few indications that Mysterio was not actually a hero and was not on the level. And Parker picked up on none of it. And neither did Fury, but we already talked about why Fury didn't. I should say why Tobal, or whatever the hell his name is, didn't do it. But anyways, I do have to admit, even though it was played for laughs, I actually kind of like the sub-arc between I can't remember his name and I can't remember her name. It's just, yeah, we're boyfriend and girlfriend now. I entered that plane as a boy, but now I've left it as a man. Coming, sweetie. And then they spend the whole movie being lovey-dovey with each other. But Ned, thank you. Ned and Betty. I know this sounds strange, but for me it worked great because it would have been so easy for them to overdo that, right? To make it too much, too saccharine, too ridiculous, too over the top. And that would have taken away from it. Instead, they actually managed just the right amount of puppy love, is what my sister calls that, of puppy love. And he's still there, but at the same time, he's like, okay, yeah, I'll make up this thing. Coming, sweetie. You know, just the whole thing. There was actually a really cool dynamic between the two. And I have to point this out, they even part on amicable terms, which, I mean, I can name 2 relationships I've had in my life where we parted on amicable terms. I'm sure some people do that in their lives. But Ned was great. Betty was great. And again, the dynamic between the two was awesome. And of course, Ned was just awesome, as he always is in these films. That's not really a surprise either. Yeah, I don't think Ned would blab either. I mean, you'll notice when Ned walked in on Parker in uniform as Night Monkey and MJ, Ned immediately started coming up with something to kind of obfuscate and talk around the situation. I mean, come on. That's Ned right there. For everything else you could say about them, that man knows how to be adaptable. Just like, oh yeah, nice cosplay, huh? Right? You know, we've got this going. I love it. Although I did find it amusing how he was trying to help Parker switch seats to sit next to MJ, ended up making it worse in every way. Something about that highly amused me. Ned is a great guy in the chair. Now, I haven't talked a whole lot about not Maria Hill and not Nick Fury, but I just want to say really quick, probably the coolest moment the two had was when Fury is standing there at the building, and then the cloaking goes off, and so there's a drone right there ready to kill him. I don't know why it hasn't killed him yet, but whatever. And he says, "You got me?" And she's already on the roof. Yeah, I got you. That was actually a pretty cool scene. Anyways. My sister isn't really one for cussing. Like, she cusses more than I do, obviously. That's not hard to accomplish. But when guy who was aged, I can't remember his name, but the kid who actually didn't get... when he was basically willing to blackmail or effectively slander Peter in order to try and get in with MJ. Brad, that's it. My sister actually cussed at him. Like, what the... I actually found that very amusing in its own horrible way. She was pissed that someone would be that petty about it. I was amused, because of course someone's going to be that petty about it, especially at his age. No, seriously, think about it for a second. Let's see. So I haven't talked about Mysterio yet. Before I say anything else, what did you think about Mysterio? Look, everyone loves the cape, alright? Except for one particularly short woman. I have to admit, it actually took a surprisingly long time to have the reveal for him, especially since they were dropping hints. One of my favorite hint drops, they said, early on, is when he turns to Peter and, in a surprisingly stern tone, says, "Never apologize for being the smartest person in the room." Like, you noticed that, right? It's one of the only times his mask really slipped until the reveal. Now, first of all, I do want to say, thank goodness that they're not doing the multiverse thing. I mean, they kind of already have, but I was really worried they were going to go full hog with, yeah, we're definitely in the multiverse and blah, blah, blah. And of course, I'm sure you caught the reference to Earth 616. Haha. Although let's not talk about that. So let me go ahead and say that I really liked how they portrayed his hologram tech, and I really liked how he wasn't an individual. So I wanted to address those 2 points specifically because those are my favorite parts about him. Obviously, Jake Gyllenhaal is a good actor and he does a good job with the role. He played. You notice he played a full-on sociopath, right? Which is weird because for the most part, usually MCU villains tend to be psychopathic, violent and horrible. He was more, great. Now I got to kill Peter Parker. Thanks. And yes, the box of scraps was behind it all. Hang on. Rewind. So, first of all, I like what they did. I liked that he was a team. In fact, I would say probably my absolute favorite aspect of Mysterio in this film was the fact that he wasn't one guy. That he was a full team of people working together to make that happen. That was actually really awesome. And not just because I tend to adhere to ideas of teamwork and cooperation in general, but because it makes so much sense that he wouldn't be able to accomplish the level and type of things he did without a full crew constantly maintaining and uplifting the illusion. And we actually see they go out of their way to show us the ways in which they are specifically maintaining the illusion later on, so we can then imagine the earlier scenes and how he was accomplishing them. They show us the magic trick, and then they show us behind the curtain, so to speak. And I think both takes work very well. We all know that the real villain of the next film, though, is going to be, I can't remember her name, but the one who was trying to get the wrinkles out of the cape. But I loved the fact that they specifically pointed out, he was the guy who was behind Barf. And they even showed the scene, because you might have forgotten. And then, of course, Box of Scrap Guys, he was involved. And then they just kind of went down the list a little bit. I was hoping they were going to pull more specific references into previous things. But instead it was just, and then there's him, and then there's him, and then there's her, and so forth and so on. But I loved the team. I loved the concept. I also loved the hologram tech. Absolutely adored it. It was probably the single best way I've ever seen Mysterio's powers portrayed. And I love how reasonably consistent they were. And I have to say reasonably, because I'd have to go back through with a notepad, like rumination style, to really pay attention. But I do very much love that by every account that I saw, the hologram tech works in one of two distinct ways. It's a bubble projecting in, or it's a bubble projecting out, which I hear like this. And in both cases, and that's portrayed fairly consistently in both cases. Once you're outside the bubble, you can see it for what it is, or once you're inside the bubble, you can see it for what it is. And in both cases, you can see how they're accomplishing the illusion. And I really love how Mysterio, the way he actually managed to defeat Parker, was by nailing him with the Stark thing. Just smashing him in the face with that. And then pulling the classic reversal. I am a little irritated that Spider-Man didn't immediately pick up on the fact that that wasn't Nick Fury. Because it was obviously not Nick Fury. He was too forceful. He was too insistent on information that Fury should never have cared about. I get the idea. The point is to put you completely and utterly off balance, and then to smack you as hard as you can, emotionally, verbally. I get that type of con. It is a classic con, but it's also an extremely obvious con. However, I'm willing to let it slide because obviously this is something that Parker... There's two... Nova Knight mentions the second thing I was going to say, that Parker doesn't know Fury like we do. We know Fury would never do that. But he's basically never... He has, in fact, literally never met Fury, if we're being blunt about it. And two, and more to the point, he was just hit by probably the biggest point of emotional trauma he has right now. So... Very, very traumatized, because, remember, Mysterio was just slamming him over and over with the whole Stark thing. And then immediately followed up with someone he didn't actually know demanding information from him. So I can kind of buy it. Shrug. The undead Iron Man suit was actually pretty awesome. Horrifying, but awesome. And I just want to gush one more time about the illusion tech. They did a really good job with that. Like a really, really, really good job with it. Probably my favorite, from a purely cinematographic, that's the wrong word, we'll just say cinematic. Probably from a purely cinematic perspective in terms of construction of film, effects, the specific direction and choreography. The best scene in that film for me would be the scene right at the end where there's Mysterio and there's Parker, and Mysterio, and they're in the corridor, and Mysterio just sets out the holograms, and then Parker's just like, and he just moves his way through, and you could kind of see what is there and what isn't there, and as he pushes his way through and takes out more and more of the drones, the illusion just breaks down bit by bit. It was an extremely well done scene. I can't even imagine how many months were spent on that scene alone. That was brilliant. And then, of course, right at the end, he does actually catch that he's right there and deflects the shot. That was just, that was all great. That was all phenomenal. Oh, and of course, you'll notice that the person, because, of course, you don't want a 17-year-old to kill someone, but you'll notice the person who killed Mysterio was Mysterio. Which brings me to a topic that I don't even want to discuss. Did Mysterio actually die? Now, let me go ahead and say very firmly my opinion, yes, he's dead. He's super dead. It didn't even occur to me that he might have actually survived until I got out of the film and looked up some discussions on the matter and found out that apparently there's actually been quite a bit of back and forth, arguing over whether or not he actually died. Now, I'm going to name two big reasons why I think he's actually dead. I suppose I should say why he is... What's his name? Hang on. What the hell was his character name? I keep saying Mysterio. Beck. Quentin Beck. So let me explain why I do believe firmly and officially that Quentin Beck is dead. First of all, he did actually get shot, and that is something that is going to hurt with the kind of rounds they're using there. That's military-grade assault rifle. So yeah, Beck is dead, in my opinion. But we clearly know that several of Mysterio's team lives on. So that not only makes sense, but appeals to me from kind of a narrative perspective. Second, it also, because of how frankly petty he was as an individual, I like the idea that his final thing in the mid-credits scene, his final revenge, was basically he wins even though he dies. You know, in other words, that he was so petty, that he was so pathetic, that he just had to have that last score, even as he was injured and dying right at the end there. Right? That just kind of strikes me as that kind of character, which I'll talk about in a second, because there is something I really don't like about his character too. Finally, even dead, I'm the villain. Finally, I also really like, I suppose I should add from a thematic perspective, it makes sense, the idea of someone who was pretending to be the next Iron Man's impact still being felt after his death. Finally, the reason I like that he's dead is because I hate it when someone is dead but isn't. That just pisses me off beyond words. I'm so sick of it. So we'll see when they undo it, because they assuredly will at some point. They did leave a door open, because what happened is Parker puts the glasses on, which looked great on him, by the way. And Parker puts the glasses on and says, is this real? And the response is specifically, all the illusions are off. That doesn't necessarily... She didn't say he's dead. She didn't say no life signs. She didn't say brain activity minimal. She said all of the holograms are off. So that does, unfortunately, leave the door open for the fact that he did not actually die. We'll see. That is true, Cyberpunk. Thank God. Now, let me explain what I didn't like about Mysterio, if you don't mind. And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. So, thought number one. What was his motivation? Yeah, the best I've been able to come up with is that he was trying to get other people to finally listen to him. He actually referenced that several times, especially in his big speech to his crew. But you see the problem here. Like, I assume it's self-apparent even just by the way I phrased the question. His plan was terrible. And I know this is the MCU and most villain plans are terrible, but his plan is one of the most pathetic, terrible, awfully constructed plans I've ever seen. Now, we could argue that this is in character or out, as in if it's an aspect of him being very, very stupid and short-sighted, or if it's an aspect of bad writing. Take your pick. But either way, I found myself actually very de-invested in the villain, pretty much the moment he revealed his motives. That is to say, his lack of motives. We'll become an Avenger! Okay. And then what? What do you do when you have a real threat? What do you do when the other Avengers are actually here to talk with you and deal with you? What do you do when anyone who has any ability to look past your garbage whatsoever sees you for what you are? I mean, just to name one character. What happens when he meets Scarlet Witch? Like, this is a plan of glass. No spoon reference intended. There's no end game there. There's no, and then he wins. Yeah, what happens when you meet Hawkeye, whose big shtick, by the way, is perception? Hawkeye was even able to see around Scarlet Witch's illusions, and her illusions are literally magic, powered by an Infinity Stone. Like I said, Fallout, we can debate whether it was out of character writing incompetence or in character incompetence, but one way or another, there's some form of incompetence here. And I will admit, it actively de-invested me in the character a lot. Like, he has this big speech, and I'm just sitting here like... Because I started off being like, that was awesome, because of the team thing. Like I said, I really liked the fact that he was a team. And then he started really ranting, and I'm just sitting here like, okay. Okay. Where are you going with this, buddy? We'll see. I don't know. Whatever. It is, of course, amusing that this is, I believe, the fourth villain of the MCU who is specifically a villain because he was shunned by Tony Stark. Uh-oh. It's more money for Legend of Dragoon. Thank you very much, Kyfrin. Much appreciate, as always. Thank you very much. Now, I will say one thing in favor of the fact that he was pathetic. He was a Spider-Man villain. Now, I'm not saying Spider-Man villains have to be pathetic. I actually think the Vulture was a startlingly chilling, terrifying threat back in the last Spider-Man film. Very personal level, but still. I mean, Michael Keaton managed to just be damned intimidating in that film. But I do think that it makes sense that Spider-Man, who is basically mid-tier in terms of overall power and influence and whatnot, and is still a kid, I remind you, is someone who should deal with someone who isn't actually a world ender, right? So, I'm kind of with that. It's just, ugh, I don't know. The second thing I wanted to say about the whole Mysterio thing is actually more a thing about Parker. The Peter Tingle. It's actually kind of irritated me a little bit that they've never even tried to explain Spider-Sense at all in the MCU. Mostly because, as a consequence of not explaining it, the writers have been able to do whatever they want with it. And sometimes it's there, and sometimes it's not, and sometimes it works great, and sometimes it doesn't work at all. And something about that just irritates me. The inconsistency of it irritates me. I do like the way they show Spider-Sense at the finale of this film. I do actually like how they very, very well showcase how he is able to use that in order to fight something that he himself can barely comprehend with all of the rest of his senses. So that was good. It just kind of irritates me that it's such an ill-defined factor that the writers can just say, now it works, now it doesn't. I will at least give them credit for the fact that they bothered to write in the fact that it wasn't working in this film. They even had a scene where she threw a freaking banana at him. And what's funny is, if you remember, so she throws the banana and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were going to catch it. Before she even said that, my first reaction was, how did he not dodge that? That's Spider-Man. That's actually one of his biggest traits, is his agility and his senses. And then she called it out, and I'm like, aha! Come on! Anyways, sorry. I'm trying to think if I have anything else to say about this film. I guess that's actually it. I'm very curious what's going to happen to Spider-Man now that he's been ousted. Like, really. Because there's a lot of possibilities there. Oh yeah, I suppose I should mention something. Kevin Feige has already said that he has a firm interest in doing a large number of films, specifically centered around just Parker. Just Spider-Man. There's still some rumors circling that, and all of those rumors are unsubstantiated, so I hesitate to report on any of the rumors. The only rumor I'm going to mention is the one I already did, that Feige apparently is interested in really expanding just Spider-Man films going forward. We'll see. Oh yeah, I did actually have one more thing to talk about, and that's Night Monkey. No, I'm kidding. Although the Night Monkey thing was awesome. Oh, I already talked about that, fellow. It was the first thing I talked about during the spoiler section. It was literally the first thing I talked about. One of the things that I find interesting is we know basically nothing about Phase 4 right now. We know there's a Black Widow film, and that's kind of it. Everything else, if you actually dig into it, if you actually look at the sources and find out what their source is for which film is what, or what's going to happen where, all of it is random references or inferences from interviews or from panels at Comic-Con or at interviews or whatever. But there's been no actual official announcement of the specifics of Phase 4 yet, with the exception of the Black Widow film, which we know has entered filming, because it entered filming like a month ago. That's it. That's all. So, you might think, Lore, why are you bringing this up? Well, one of the things that I was looking into when I was going into, finding out what they're going with next, is that this weekend, Kevin Feige and several other people at Marvel and Disney have announced that at this coming Comic-Con, which is July 20th, I believe, but it's this month, either way, they're going to have a substantial panel announcing everything they're going to be doing for Phase 4. And that's where all of our official Phase 4 announcements are going to come from. I think that's interesting, because if you're paying attention, for the most part, that's not how they've done things up until now. Usually they've been quite open and overt about this is coming out, this and this. I mean, how many years ago did we know when Infinity War was coming out, right? Like, not just that it was coming out, but when it was coming out. They've had this mapped out for a while. But this is the first time they've just been kind of like, yeah, we're working on a few things, and there's been rumors and there's been inferences, but no real official confirmation of any specifics until now, basically, until the end of this month. So I'm actually going to be paying attention to that. I'm sure some of you guys are as well, because I am very curious what their intention is for Phase 4. Because they could go in basically any direction at this point. The Infinity Saga is over. They have an established world. They can do whatever story they want to at this point. They could do disconnected stories. They could do major arcs again. I don't know. Personally, I'm not sure, Calloway. But based on how movie construction usually goes, I would say no. I would say it's more likely that they have under the hood had most of an idea of what they're doing with Phase 4 since Infinity War at the very, very latest. Because money drives these things, and they needed to know exactly how financially successful, the end of Phase 3 was going to be before they really sit down and etch in stone Phase 4. I'm sure they had some kind of loose outline for Phase 4, even before that. But as for actually codifying it, no, they waited until the financial returns. I would imagine Black Panther and Infinity War both really pushed Phase 4 into, okay, we're in go mode. But that's just my take on that. This is my final question to you guys. Blackfile actually already addressed it. If you had a preference, if it was your choice, would you rather that Phase 4, specifically Phase 4, was about an arc? One cohesive arc across the movies? Or would you prefer it was just a bunch of completely disconnected movies that happen to be in the same setting? And now I wait. Now we play the waiting game. I mean, I heard someone earlier mention Secret War. By the way, I'll give you my answer on this, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts first. Especially since my answer's cheating. The reason I mention this, by the way, is I've seen several people in several discussion circles basically say that they shouldn't do long-term arcs again, that there should never again, literally never, should be another Infinity Saga. Some people say that because they're tired of keeping track of every single movie to keep track of the story. Some people have said that because they don't like major story arcs. Some people have said that because they think they could never top Infinity Saga, and therefore they shouldn't try. They should try to do something else rather than another major arc. And that last point is actually kind of interesting in its own right, because honestly, that's kind of how the actual comic books went, wasn't it? Both DC and Marvel had several fairly large-scale, very successful arcs. We had the Age of Apocalypse. X-Men had the Age of Apocalypse, you remember that? We had the original Infinity War for Marvel. We had Crisis of Infinite Earths over in DC. All of these were very big, very successful, arguably well-done arcs. And every single one of them, they then tried to do another arc that was basically trying to do the same thing. And it can be argued that the quality of each successive arc was less. Now, this is something that can be debated, of course, because it's a matter of quality. House of M? No, admittedly, I was thinking older than that, but House of M does qualify in such a manner. Although, of course, there was also the Onslaught saga, which was just its own thing. Which was a direct consequence of Age of Apocalypse, by the way. So anyways, my point being, I could kind of see... Yeah, Phalanx Saga, let's not even talk about that one. I could kind of see why some people would say, let's not try to do that again. Let's try to do something different, see how that works out. The problem is, when it comes to movies, there's really only two options. Arc or no arc. God, I hope not, Chocolate Rob. So, here's my opinion. Like I said, I'm cheating because I think we should do both. To put it into the simplest terms possible, I think they should pull a Mists of Pandaria. Now, the off chance you've never seen my Warcraft stuff, Pandaria was the fourth expansion to World of Warcraft. It was done in the immediate wake of a massive, huge, world-altering, cataclysmic event called the Cataclysm, in which we had to defeat the literal aspect of destruction itself, operating on the auspices of the old gods, and permanently dealt with the Twilight Hammer as a major global power. We quite literally saved the planet from being destroyed. And the aspects lost their power, and the Horde and Alliance were now in a full-scale war with each other, and basically the status quo was fundamentally altered forever. Then Pandaria started. Now, if you haven't seen my lore run of it, I don't blame you because it's a large lore run, and it's incomplete because of the episode that was lost. But the long and the short of it is, Pandaria started off as a breather episode. Like, there was a brief war stint, but basically Pandaria was two separate threads which occasionally were weaving into each other as it was going throughout the story of Pandaria. So there's a lot of breather material. There was a lot of just, here's the regional story, here's the local story, here's a cultural story, here's a personal story. And every now and again, the overall narrative of what was going on with Garrosh and the Horde versus Alliance and the nature of that conflict was woven into the background, until the Legion started getting woven into the background, and then Raytheon started weaving into the background, until by the end of Pandaria, the story was no longer about Pandaria at all. It was all about the conclusion of the Horde-Alliance war. That's what I would do with Phase 4. Start off basically as a breather, and finish as the conclusion of an arc. Or I should say more accurately, as the beginning of an arc, in this case. That's what I would do. Sure, McCool, which one? So, in other words, to put this into such terminology, there would be hints, bits and pieces of whatever the next arc is, in basically every film. But it would be something woven into the narrative, and something just kind of in the background, right? Like, it's just kind of there. Like, okay, yeah. That's funny, McCool. Probably my second favorite scene in this film was the scene where he's on the jet, and, you know, there's Happy, there's Parker. The two have a great heart-to-heart. And he goes back, and it's like, I want to make a new suit. And there's the suit-making device, Tony's suit-making device there. And Happy's like, hang on, I got the music. And Parker's like, oh, I love AC/DC, or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, I suppose Phase 1 is kind of what I was talking about, too, because Phase 1 did have bits and pieces of what would be Avengers in it, you're right. And Avengers itself was functionally the beginning of the Infinity Saga. Oh, he says Led Zeppelin. That was what it is. Yeah, I've tried to just let it go, Bragman. If you remember, during the actual lore run, I threatened to ban people for making that joke, because I was just so sick of it at the time. Anyways, point being, that's all I got. So let's go ahead and chop this off, because we need to play some Witcher.